to stand for our opening hymn, Joy of the Lord. Here we go.
Please know that everyone, whether you're here or at home, are receiving our love in our hearts, and our church family is priceless. Do we have any new members, new people? Any visitors? Would you mind telling us your name and where you're from?
I'm Sharon Gregorski, and I'm from Niles, Michigan, and I'm Marion's bestest friend.
Yeah, we're very happy about that. We're happy to have you with us here on this Sunday morning, and we're a loving community here to support you with your walk with God. And any way we can do anything, and it's our sincere hope that you'll return and become a part of our spiritual family. That would be nice. So we have an announcement. There's an old-fashioned unity prayer service from 9 to 9:30 every Sunday. This is held in the Temple Library, and it's a guided meditation prayer time. A great way to feel your connection to God and find that place of peace that surpasses all understanding. And prayer service is generally facilitated by Rev Denise. So next week, one more time, I will be doing it because she will be gone. Usually we have a midweek meditation class on Tuesdays at 1:30 in the Temple Library, but that's been suspended while Rev Denise is out of town this week and next week. It's a lovely way to get going in the middle of the week. So hopefully you'll join us in a couple weeks when she's back. And we're going to be having our first spiritual healing event on April the 16th from 2 to 4 p.m. here in the sanctuary. The 7 ladies who were in the Healing Project will be performing their act as they took to Arrowhead Mall to start the event. That was an interesting experience. Yes, it is something. So you might just want to come and see what we did. And Reverend Denise will be dressed up like a man. And the cost will be $20. We will have someone playing Tibetan bowls. We'll have 3 Reiki people, a spiritual counsel, and someone who will pray with you at this event. Come and be a part of this amazing energy. And the temple is having an event. They're having an exciting music event, the Salty Dogs. It's an acoustic folk music group comprised of vocalists and instrumental players. And the instruments are guitars, banjo, bass, harmonica, and rhythm. And the Dogs playing Peter, Paul, and Mary, Bob Dylan, and others, with an occasional Irish tune or an original thrown into the mix. They hope that'll be fun and encourage the audience to sing along. And you can mark your calendars. It'll be March 26th at 2 p.m. The cost is $15. And I think you'll be able to get them at the church office after next week, between 9 and 12, or maybe before that. So you wouldn't want to miss out on that. Sounds like fun? As we said, Reverend Denise is taking a couple weeks off after she went through the 9-week Healing Grief and Loss project and keeping everything else going in the church and for the temple. She gets a little time here to rejuvenate. So Reverend James will be our minister today, which will be wonderful. It always is. So I'm looking forward to that a lot. And then next Sunday, Reverend Blair Tabor from California will be our guest speaker. And his talk is going to be "No Normal for Me, Please." So who knows what normal is? Please come and support both these people. I'm glad you're all here today. Our prayer chaplain for today will be Miss Jan Carnes. And our board member of the day will be lovely Linda Thomas. Thank you, ladies. They just found that out now. Okay, would you please join me in saying our mission statement? It's in your bulletin. I believe it's on the bottom of the first page. Together. Our mission is to provide a prosperous and loving community by connecting to God through prayer and following the teachings of Christ. Heavenly Father, joy is in our hearts, joy is in our mind, hopefully joy is in our words and our actions throughout this day and every day, sprinkled out throughout the day, joy. We know that God, you're with us every moment of every day, that we're never alone, that you're always there to comfort and deal with whatever comes up in life. It does, even the things that don't express any joy. We know that you're there to hold our hand when we're worried about anything, whether it's how we're going to pay the bills or how we're going to get through this next medical visit or why haven't we heard from our children or our grandchildren. We know you're there. You know that you're with all of our family and our friends. That there's not a human being on this planet that you don't love 100%. So that includes each and every one of us. It is a joy to know that you are loved. And God truly loves you. And God will lead and guide you to what is highest and best for each and every one of us. We're not alone. We're always in good company. And we can be at peace. Quiet, peaceful joy. And so it is. Amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
And from the daily word, the word of the day is grace. I am in awe of the unending grace of God. When I think of grace, I may envision a ballet dancer moving with elegance across the stage. I may observe a bird in flight, peacefully soaring above the earth. I may picture a meadow of vibrant flowers gently swaying in the breeze. Grace is also personal, blessing my relationship with God and touching every aspect of my spiritual living. I experience grace when I lovingly share my time and energy. I let go of resentment and choose forgiveness. Or I use my words and actions to help others. By giving of myself, I share the beauty of God's unending grace. Whether out in the world or deep in my heart, I feel deeply and abundantly blessed. I walk in spiritual awareness, one with the grace and the benevolence of God. The scripture comes from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 22. The Lord be with your spirit. Grace be with you.
This way once. If there's any good that I can do, let me do it now. For I'll never pass this way again. I will see this day once. morning.
Good morning.
Oh, it's nice to be back up here again to see all your wonderful, smiling, shiny faces. So, I have a question for you. Did you know that we all have a bucket? I don't mean like a mop bucket. And I don't mean a bucket list. I mean an invisible spiritual bucket. Yeah. Some people say it kind of hovers above our heads. Some people say it's basically in us. It's in our hearts, you could say. So I want to talk about buckets. Specifically your bucket. Now again, I'm going to say it. I want to be really clear. This is not a bucket list. So I don't want you to go home and list everything you want to do before we pass on. That's not what this is about. This is about filling your bucket and filling other people's too. It's located deep inside of us, and our daily interactions with other people determine how full or empty our bucket is. And it doesn't have to be a big interaction. It can be some little something. A handshake, a smile, a hug, a tone of voice, a facial expression, a body gesture. For better or worse, those little things can change the level of our bucket. And we have these little tiny experiences more often than you would expect. Sometimes I think maybe it doesn't have to even be a human interaction. Have you ever seen those TV commercials for, they don't show them so much anymore, but the EcoBoost cars, the ones that burn less fuel, this would be better for the environment and all that kind of stuff. Well, what if they had a car that had EcoBoost? What if we got inside of our car, hit the keys or the start button or whatever it is, put our seatbelt on, we close the door, start it up, hit the little bucket button. My, you look handsome today. Are those new earrings? Is that a new tie? You look awesome. Well, what about, well, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I remember the cars that used to speak, but they never complimented you. It was just usually, put your seatbelt on. You're going too fast. And that brings me to an important point, though. In order to truly place a deposit into someone else's bucket, it has to be sincere. I don't know if you can really call the EcoBoost cars sincere. So that's why I say this. People can see through insincerity. You're probably familiar with Dale Carnegie. And he wrote a really famous book way back in the mid-30s that's never been out of print. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you've never read it, I recommend it. And he talks about this very concept. He said that your kind words must be of the utmost sincerity and that people can see through a disingenuous compliment as easily as they can see through a window. We see this type of insincerity all the time, especially in show business among celebrities. They praise one another on one news show or talk show and tear somebody down in the next one. Having spent much of my professional life in show business, in New York and musical theater stage and opera, I can say I've seen this firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. Darling, you look fabulous! You know? Your soprano Ari was the best ever. She sounded like the garbage truck brakes on it. It was awful. So you might be asking, but what if this person is a real stinkola? Yes, I got that from a friend of mine a long time ago. A stinkola. What if they're all grumpy and grouchy and toxic and bleh? There's always something positive to say about somebody, everybody, no matter how disagreeable that person might be. Now this is where our church philosophy comes into play. We've talked about these things before, about seeing the person for the spiritual gift of God that they are. If we do that, It'd be easy to say something positive. Here's an everyday example you might run into. You ever walked up to a grumpy checker at the supermarket or the coffee or the Starbucks or any place else, offered a quick smile, and he or she starts ringing up your order? Have you ever noticed what happens? Despite their grumpiness, they probably smile back. Probably. Maybe not every time, but usually. And you know what? If he does, then you've just made a deposit into that person's bucket. And maybe even turned the whole day around. You know what else? Research, don't get that word out yet. Research has shown that more often than not, they'll go on to put that smile to use on someone else. Mother Teresa once said, every time you smile at someone, it's an act of love. Clearly she was talking about filling buckets. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to help us learn a little bit more about how to fill someone's bucket. And maybe, just maybe, we'll all go home with our buckets a little bit fuller today. Are you ready? Yes. All right, good. Let's do it. Today I want to talk about 4 ideas that we must understand to go about filling someone's bucket. But before we can truly understand what it means to fill a bucket, we need to understand also what it means to do the opposite, to dip from someone's bucket. We've all done it, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It can take the form of a condescending look, an unkind word, a tone of voice, a rush to judgment. That last one's a biggie. But there might be a way to remedy that. Something I learned from someone a long time ago is to carry this imaginary rolled-up sock with you. Carry it with you at all times so that when you start to say something you shouldn't, you can stick it in your mouth. You know what you ought to do it? It's kind of like those bracelets that were going around for a while. In fact, I think you might even still be able to get them, those reminder bracelets. And you keep them on. They used to do it with rubber bands. And whenever you forget to do something, you whack. Reminds us not to complain. And that if we do something for 21 days, that it tends to start a new habit. That if we can avoid complaining, avoid judgment for 21 days, we might be able to break that habit. This is the same idea. Now, I know that when we say something when we shouldn't, we shouldn't be saying it's working its way up out of our craw. We know that. We know it's coming up. We know it's there. People say, oh, it just pops up in my mouth. No, it doesn't. It's there in your brain. We all do it. Rarely does anything just pop out of our mouths without warning. We know it's coming. We just fail to control it. And sometimes we run across someone who just rubs us the wrong way and we think, wouldn't it be fun to put them in their place? Now listen here, Buster. So that leads me to my first point. Number 1, it all begins with you. Whether you realize it or not, you are the answer to someone's prayer. You are the solution to someone's insurmountable problem. But it's hard to do when your bucket is running low or running on empty. We've all probably taken an airplane flight or two in our lives, right? What do? As soon as they do, they start to taxi off toward the runway, and they have the flight attendant up there with the seat belt and the oxygen mask. If the cabin pressure should drop, they say you do, take the oxygen mask and put it on yourself first, right? If you have somebody who is incapacitated, a young child, somebody who's disabled, they can't do it themselves, do it for yourself first. Why? Because they know you can't help anybody if you're passed out on the floor. Do it with yourself first. Fill your own bucket first. Because you can't fill a bucket from somebody else if you got nothing in the tank. This is why we come across some people who are forever mad at the world. You see them every day at the office, on the road, sometimes right within our own families. Sometimes they manifest that empty bucket as quiet depression, like the person who sits in the corner of a cubicle all by himself, never doing much of anything. Sometimes it comes out as rudeness. Sometimes it comes out as all-out hostility and bullying. They threaten and yell and insult and boil over. But in reality, they're trying to find some way of filling their own bucket. But it does nothing but continue to drain their own. And then when it gets completely empty and they still keep going, some truly awful things can happen. Empty buckets create emotional emptiness. And that emptiness leads to hate and suffering. And then we become mad at the world. We hate everything and everyone because we think that everybody has something that we don't. And that leads to one of the worst things of all, envy. See, God's calling. He agrees. But it also, an empty bucket can lead to one of the worst and destructive human emotions. Now, I've spoken about envy in the past, but it really bears repeating because envy erodes the best of who we are, and it separates us from everyone else, including God, creating this overwhelming sense of isolation. And when that happens, you no longer have control over your life. Everything becomes about what happens out here. We have no more ability to generate our own happiness and our own inspiration. And then you get people who begrudge others for even the tiniest bit of joy. What are you happy for? What could you possibly have to be happy about? You heard people say that? Oh yeah, they do. When I was a kid, they used to talk about the green-eyed monster. People say, oh, that's jealousy. No, it's not. It's envy. There's a difference. And when I was younger, I didn't know. I thought jealousy and envy are the same things. No, it's actually not. Jealousy comes from a place of fear. It comes from a place of a fear of losing something we already have. A husband is jealous of his wife hanging out with another guy at work, even if it's just a platonic work relationship. Same thing, opposite, a wife with a husband. You're gone for 2 or 3 weeks because you're sick at work and somebody else takes your place and they're doing a really good job at your job. That's jealousy. You're afraid that you're going to lose something. Envy, on the other hand, comes from this empty bucket. It comes from a feeling of not enough. It comes from ingratitude. It comes from a feeling of less than. And it ultimately turns into hate. And it's extremely destructive. If I can't have it, the saying goes, ain't no way you're going to have it. And all that does is drain our bucket. It just sucks the bottom out of our bucket at that point. So what's the best way around all this? It actually pretty easy, if you can do it, is to put a deposit into someone else's bucket. As hard as that may be, try it. In the littlest, tiniest bit of deposit. Because every time you do that, you put a drop or two in your own bucket. And the next time, it's a little bit easier. And the next time, it's a little bit easier than that. And on and so forth. It becomes this wonderful cycle of joy at that point. And the more we fill others' buckets, the fuller ours becomes. That brings me to idea number 2. Don't allow fear to stop you. Don't be afraid to step up and make that bucket deposit for someone else. Living in fear is like wearing a full suit of armor that's bolted to the floor. You can't feel anything, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. It makes us afraid to connect. Don't be afraid to connect. Don't be afraid. Especially don't be afraid to be kind. Perhaps offer a handshake or a hug. I try never to miss an opportunity to thank men and women in the military or the police if I come across them. We ought to be taking every opportunity to love and be kind that we can. every opportunity that we can squeeze out of our lives because we don't have forever. Now, it should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't put yourself in danger. I don't mean walk into a riot zone and see, I'm filling buckets today, But we get the idea. Danger aside, we should take every opportunity to show kindness. Because we're only on this path once. We know that we're spiritual beings, and that spiritual reality is that there is no death. But at the same time, we also know that our time in these bodies is limited. So the time to offer a kind word is now. The time to give a hug is now. The time to give someone a ride to church is now. The time to buy someone lunch is now. Speaking of which, a while back, when I was in a drive-thru at my local McDonald's and I pulled up to the window, I was pleasantly surprised to find that the person in front of me had already paid my bill. I was so ecstatic. I never had that happen before. I was so excited I almost drove off without my food. But then I used that joyous moment to fill somebody else's bucket. I thought what fun it would be. And I paid for the car behind me. I can't help but wonder if that person stuck around long enough to get his food. Maybe he or she paid the bill behind them. I'd like to share one more quick example. This is some years ago, a story about a Spanish runner named, let's see if I got this right, Ivan Fernandez Anaya, who was competing in a marathon in Spain, and he was second place to a Kenyan runner who made the mistake of slowing down because he thought that the race had ended about 10 minutes short of where it actually did. The crowd was yelling to the Kenyan runner to keep going, but since he didn't understand Spanish, he stopped anyway. Now, Ivan had an opportunity to surge ahead and win the race, an opportunity no one would have faulted him for taking advantage of, least of all his coach. But he didn't. What he did do was slow down and guide the Kenyan runner to the finish line, taking second place for himself. When the newspaper interviewed him about what he had done, he said this, "I didn't deserve to win. I did what I had to do. He was the rightful winner. He created a gap that I couldn't possibly have closed had he not made a mistake. As soon as I saw he was stopping, I knew I wasn't going to pass him." Ivan didn't let fear of losing or the wrath of his coach stop him. Talk about filling someone's bucket. He jumped at the chance to help someone else. And that brings me to number 3. The time is now. There's a famous quote that's been attributed to lots of different people, but I'm pretty sure it came from John F. Kennedy, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it goes like this. If not now, when? If not you, then who? So, if not now, when? And if not you, if not us, then who? There is no better time than the present to give someone the gift of love and kindness. We talk about this all the time at Unity. Don't fret about the future. It hasn't happened yet. And the future isn't promised to us. Don't fret about the past. It's over and there's nothing we can do about it. Move on. Live in the moment that you have right now. Right now. We're all together here in this room, and this is a now that we can enjoy. We are filling one another's buckets simply by being in the presence of one another. So I'm going to invite you to look at someone beside you or behind you around and see their face. Take in their beautiful smile, their eyes, their expression. Now, when you do that, then turn to someone else and do the same thing. There. We just created a moment of now. And maybe even placed a deposit in a few buckets. Our lives continue to be a series of constant nows. Now, now, now. And when we work to fill another's bucket, those little nows become precious. They are the moments we remember most fondly when the time comes to lay down our earthly bodies. When you looked at the person sitting next to you, did you notice anything? Their smile, their eyes. Did you notice that that's you? Huh? What I mean is this. We are all human beings on this earth, and we all want and need the same things. All the same basic things. It doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter what religion we are. It doesn't matter what our skin color is. It doesn't matter what country we come from, the clothes we wear, how much money we make, what kind of car we drive, what kind of house we live in. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. We all want to be loved. We all want to be appreciated and wanted. We all want to be wanted. We all want to be needed. And if we go through life looking for that type of lens in everyone we meet, can you imagine the incredible place this planet would be? There isn't a single person in this room right now who hasn't felt the sting of loneliness. Who hasn't cried. Who hasn't felt loss, or grief, or desperation. There's also no one here in this room this morning who hasn't felt elation, joy, and wonder. And in all those things, we are the same. We are all human beings. And I need you just as much as you need me. And God help us if we ever forget that. It's time to make those connections. Now, and it's up to you. Finally, number 4, only you can make a difference. What I mean is, don't stand around waiting for someone else to do what you know needs to be done. If you notice it, if you see it, you can do it. When I was a teenager, I took my first CPR and first aid class in order to work with special needs kids. And one of the first things they taught us was if we happen upon a medical emergency and we see somebody who's in need of aid, and we start rendering aid, the first thing we need to do is look at somebody and say, you, call 911. Not somebody call 911. Because everybody else will go, well, it doesn't mean me. Somebody's going to call 911. And it never gets called. There have been times when there are crowds of 40, 50 people gathered around an emergency situation. Somebody says, somebody call 911. Half an hour later, still nobody's called. They say that because they understood that we all have a tendency to stand around waiting for somebody else to do something. Somebody else to make that call. It doesn't make us bad. It's just a habit. The same idea requires what we're talking about today. If there's something you can do and you know you can do it, step up. Fill the bucket. Fill that need. One of the times in my life my bucket was really overflowing was one Christmas season when I was a teenager. My mom used to be a foster parent, caring for some of the most difficult teens and young adults in the system. Most of them had pretty severe mental disabilities with behavior issues, and sometimes it was very difficult to take them where they wanted to go. And one of those places was to the shopping mall to see Santa. So, what did we do? We bought a Santa suit. I must say I was pretty dapper looking in that suit at the ripe old age of 16. I secretly went into the garage and donned the suit, picked up my bag of presents, and made my way into the house, hoeing all the way. And everyone in our foster home had the chance to visit with Santa and be who they were without the risk of stares or unkind remarks. As a matter of fact, there was a social worker visiting at the time that we did that. And she was so, I don't want to say impressed, that sounds arrogant. She liked what we had done, to the point where she went back and she reported what she had seen. We got calls from foster homes and group homes from all over the valley. And so we set up a little Santa's workshop inside the garage. And I sat there, and there were lines of people. They came. For a couple of weeks we did that before Christmas. It was the most awesome Christmas I'd ever had. It was the coolest thing. So when the word got out, it was just incredible. I think it was the single best Christmas I had. We were able to fill countless buckets, while at the same time filling ours to overflowing. So those are the 4 ideas on how to go about filling buckets, your own included. But I want you to understand the single most important thing about today's lesson. And if you remember only this, we are all on this earth, in these bodies, at this exact time in history for a purpose. And that purpose is to be a shining light for others. How you go about shining that light is between you and God. Some people do big, giant things like founding a multinational charity. That's great. But it's important to remember that shining your light, filling someone else's bucket, doesn't have to be big to be deeply felt. It doesn't have to involve multinational corporations and billions of dollars in television or radio or the internet. I want you to leave today with a quote from one of my favorite speakers of all time, Leo Buscaglia. If you're familiar with him, he was a huge public speaker back in the 70s and 80s. He was also a college professor of special education at it was Cal State University, Los Angeles. As a matter of fact, my mom was one of his students. She took a couple classes from him, and I thought that was kind of a cool thing. He says, "The majority of us lead quiet, unheralded lives as we pass through this world. There will most likely be no ticker tape parades for us, no monuments erected in our honor. But that does not lessen our possible impact, for there are scores of people waiting for someone just like you to come along, people who will appreciate your compassion and your unique talents and skills. Someone who will live a happier life merely because we took the time to share what we had to give. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which they have the potential to turn a life around. It's overwhelming to consider the continuous opportunities there are to make our love felt. And God help us if we ever forget that. I am a bucket filler. Will you say that with me? I am a bucket filler. Okay, come on, one more time. Here we go. I am a bucket filler! That's right. Let them hear us down at the Safeway across the street or down the road. Remember the other one. Put a sock in it. Everybody together. Put a sock in it. You are all indeed bucket fillers. No need for socks. Amen. So I'm going to do a song now. It's kind of a fun, upbeat song, and I want you to make the words your own. I know Reverend Denise usually does some kind of a meditation afterwards. But for me, since I'm a musician and a pianist and a singer, this is my meditation. Oh, goodness, here we go.